The Battle of Yarmouk in 636 ended in a decisive victory for Muslim forces. Crushed and demoralized, the Byzantine imperial army retreated, abandoning Syria and Palestine to the mercy of the Rashidun Caliphate. With the road to Jerusalem, Aleppo, and Antioch wide open, their Byzantine garrisons prepared for the impending sieges. In this episode, we dive into the dramatic sieges of 8 cities, witnessing the Rashidun Caliphate's relentless campaign to conquer what many at the time considered the Byzantine Empire's most prized province. November 636. Jerusalem's ancient walls stand dark against the horizon of dawn. Byzantine sentinels guard the walls, watching the distance for any signs of approaching danger. Suddenly, they spot clouds of dust on the horizon. Columns of soldiers on camelback are approaching the city. The Arab army has arrived. Alarm bells sound. The gates are closed. Sophronius, the city's patriarch, orders his garrison to prepare for battle. By this time, it is too dangerous to leave. Once at the margins of the ancient world, the Arabs had emerged to challenge mighty empires. In August 636, the unthinkable had happened. The Arabs defeated a major Roman army at the Battle of Yarmouk. 3 months later, they inflicted a major defeat on the imperial army of Persia at the Battle of Qadisiyah. The contemporary document Doctrina Jacobi captures the sentiment of the Byzantine population.
What can we say about the Saracens who have arrived? They are spreading everywhere, and we are powerless against them.
Now they encircle the holy city, their banners inscribed with the message of a new faith. Inside the city walls, Patriarch Sophronius looks on in growing desperation. The holy city of Christendom now faces the armies of Islam. The defenders can do nothing more at this point than gaze at the swelling army of Arab warriors slowly building up outside of Jerusalem's walls. As people watch in anxiety, whispers of fear spread.
We hear of the Saracens' victories and tremble, for they are unstoppable. What will become of us and our children?
This is where our journey begins, a journey back in time. From the dawn of civilization in Mesopotamia to the rise of glorious empires, from the halo of fabled personalities to the shadows of ruthless regimes. Witness the drama of epic battles and the moments when the world stood still. Events that didn't destroy us, but defined us. We combine cutting-edge technology and artificial intelligence to resurrect legendary historical towns and retell ancient love stories. Underpinned by powerful music, you'll feel like you're part of it. Welcome to Epic Histories, where each chapter brings the past alive.
It's 632. The Arabian Peninsula has been transformed by the rise of a new political and religious force, Islam. Following the death of the Prophet Muhammad, his companion Abu Bakr is named the first Caliph of the Rashidun Caliphate. The new Islamic State is immediately plagued by issues because many Arab tribes will not accept Abu Bakr's rule. These uprisings, the Ridda Wars or Wars of Apostasy, are rapidly suppressed by Muslim forces at the behest of General Khalid ibn al-Walid. By 633, with control over the Arabian Peninsula firmly restored, Abu Bakr sets his mind on a bold and unexpected move: the invasion of both neighboring empires, the Byzantine Empire to the north and the Sassanid Persian Empire to the northeast. The old Byzantine and Persian empires have been worn down by decades of war with one another. Their populations left devastated by a raging plague. Now, they confront an additional threat from an unfamiliar source. Khalid ibn al-Walid, a master tactician and veteran soldier, commands the Muslim forces to early success in Iraq. Having conquered Sassanid provinces to the west of the Euphrates, he is ordered to support Muslim troops stationed in Syria. In August 636, the Muslims face a massive Roman army led by General Vahan. During the Battle of Yarmouk in Syria, Khalid ibn al-Walid takes command under General Abu Ubaida. Although outnumbered, the Muslim fighters employ superior mobility and tactics in encircling and devastating the Byzantine forces in 6 days of combat. Emperor Heraclius, upon learning about this catastrophic defeat, purportedly utters,
"Farewell, Syria."
realizing his empire has lost the important province forever. Meanwhile, in Mesopotamia, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas leads Muslim armies against the Sassanid Empire. In November 636, the Muslims fight a 60,000-strong Persian army commanded by Rostam Farrokhzad at the Battle of Qadisiyah. Initially, the Persian war elephants wreak havoc on the Arab lines, but the Arabs effectively counter them using their swift cavalry. After 4 intense days of battle, they take advantage of a sandstorm to launch a covert attack on the Persian lines. Rostam is killed and the Persian imperial army collapses. This victory paves the way for the Muslim armies to advance into the Sassanid heartland. By this time, Abu Bakr has died, and Umar ibn al-Khattab has succeeded him as the second caliph. Sa'd's forces, led by the strategic mind of Umar, advance towards Ctesiphon, the resplendent capital of the Persian Empire. After a 3-month siege ending in March 637, this great city, the world's largest at the time, falls into the hands of the Muslims. The accumulated treasures of Persian kings over centuries are plundered, and the young king Yazdegerd III flees east with his entourage and the remnants of his imperial army, seeking refuge behind the Zagros Mountains. The Battle of Yarmouk had shattered Byzantine military power in Syria. Whatever remained of the once mighty Roman army marched north in disarray. abandoning the southern provinces to advancing Muslim troops. The Byzantine soldiers, a majority of whom were wounded and demoralized, fell back towards Antioch and the safety of Anatolia beyond the Taurus Mountains. Emperor Heraclius, who had won against the Sassanids a decade earlier with Byzantium, now watched idle as his provinces in the south fell in turn. From his temporary capital in Antioch, he worked to orchestrate what forces were left to him. But with his best officers lost at Yarmouk, options were limited. Meanwhile, the victorious Muslim army, commanded overall by Abu Ubaida, regrouped near Damascus to plan their next campaign. A decision had to be made to advance on one of two primary objectives: Caesarea or Jerusalem. Caesarea, on one hand, was an excellent strategic location as the administrative capital of Byzantine Palestine and its greatest Mediterranean port. Its fall would take away from the Byzantines their primary naval base in the region, limiting their ability to send reinforcements from Constantinople. The port city was a potential staging point from which the Byzantines might launch a counterattack. Jerusalem, on the other hand, while less strategically valuable, held immense religious and symbolic significance. As the third holiest city in the emerging Islamic tradition after Mecca and Medina, its capture would be a profound spiritual victory. Sacred to Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike, its fall would serve as a powerful emblem of the new order taking shape in the region. When it became clear that the commanders of the Arab army could not agree on the next course of action, a message was sent to Medina seeking Caliph Umar's guidance. His response was swift and unequivocal.
Take Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem, the word of the approaching Arab army spread quickly. Patriarch Sophronius, the patriarch of the city's Christians, understood the gravity of the situation. Having already lost the provinces of Syria and much of Palestine, he understood that Byzantine relief troops would not arrive to aid the city. As a precaution, he ordered the holiest Christian relics in Jerusalem to be transferred to Constantinople for safekeeping, including the most sacred of all, the true cross, upon which Jesus Christ was said to have been crucified. By November 636, Muslim army advance troops were spotted on the horizon. Jerusalem, perched upon its hills and surrounded by historic walls restored by the Romans, prepared for siege. Since the conversion to Christianity by Emperor Constantine 3 centuries earlier, Jerusalem had turned into a religious center for Christians. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which had been built on the place where Christ had been crucified and resurrected, and the Church of the Nativity at Bethlehem dominated the city skyline. Much of the city had been rebuilt by the Byzantines following its demolition during the Jewish revolts against Rome in the 1st and 2nd centuries. The walls of the city were formidable. Jerusalem was defended by huge stone walls that followed the contour of the hilly terrain, an outright assault being practically impossible. These walls, first built during Herod the Great and afterwards strengthened by Roman and Byzantine engineers, stood approximately 40 feet high in parts, with square towers spaced at regular intervals. The city possessed 4 main gates: the Damascus Gate in the north, Zion Gate in the south, the Golden Gate to the east toward the Mount of Olives, and Jaffa Gate to the west. As the Arab forces arrived in November 636, they carefully assessed the city's defenses. The Muslim commanders, including Amr ibn al-As and Abu Ubaida, recognized that Jerusalem's elevated position and solid fortifications made a direct assault impractical. The city was well provisioned with food and water cisterns, allowing it to withstand a prolonged siege. Unlike many other Byzantine cities they had encountered, Jerusalem's defenses remained intact and well maintained. Inside, Patriarch Sophronius still prepared his garrison for defense. The city defenders, a mixture of Byzantine troops who had survived the disaster at Yarmouk, militia and volunteers, stood positions on the walls. Rations were distributed and prayers were offered in the churches for God to protect them. The Muslim army camped outside the city, enclosing it from the remainder of the globe. Rather than launching costly sorties against walls, they camped in for an attrition siege. Miniature skirmishes occurred when defenders launched sorties, but no widespread combat resulted. From histories reported, the siege continued months, conceivably reaching as far as early 637. At some point during the siege, Patriarch Sophronius began negotiations with the Muslim commanders. It is historically recorded that he personally requested to surrender the city directly into the hands of the Caliph rather than his generals. To expedite the city's surrender, Khalid ibn al-Walid was presented to the garrison of Jerusalem as Caliph Umar. However, Khalid's reputation preceded him, and the Byzantines quickly recognized him. In a grand gesture that indicated how highly he regarded Jerusalem, Caliph Umar traveled in person from Medina to accept the city's surrender. The only instance in the early Muslim conquests when the Caliph himself traveled to accept a city's surrender. According to Muslim and Christian sources, Umar's journey to Jerusalem was marked by simplicity that stood in stark contrast to Byzantine imperial grandeur. He traveled on a camel, sharing it with his servant, and wore simple, even-patched clothes, Islamic and Christian sources report. When he arrived in Jerusalem in early 637, local tradition has him being dusty from the journey, in stark contrast to the luxurious trappings of Byzantine and Persian emperors. The city surrendered without further bloodshed. The terms of surrender were enshrined in what became known as the Umayyad Covenant, or Pact of Umar. The pact guaranteed the safety of the Jerusalemites, the security of the churches and holy places, and freedom of religion. Christians would pay the jizya tax in exchange for protection and exemption from military service, but would not be forcibly converted. In a move of huge symbolism, Patriarch Sophronius is said to have invited Umar to pray in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Umar declined, Islamic tradition states, because if he prayed there, then future Muslims would convert it into a mosque. He prayed outside instead, where the Mosque of Umar would later be built. Most significantly for the future, perhaps, Umar visited the Temple Mount, which Christians had used as a rubbish dump, as a symbolic act against Judaism. He cleared it and established a small place of prayer at its southern end, beginning the site's importance in Islamic tradition as the place from which Muhammad was believed to have ascended to heaven during his night journey. After the capture of Jerusalem, Abu Ubaida divided the Muslim forces into three tactical groups. Amr ibn al-As advanced northwest to encircle Caesarea, the only major Byzantine port in Palestine. Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan consolidated the coastal regions of Palestine, while Abu Ubaida and Khalid ibn al-Walid advanced north to deal with remaining Byzantine fortresses in Syria. Caesarea posed a problem in its strongly fortified walls and ability to be reinforced by sea from Constantinople. Umar established siege positions, expecting a protracted campaign against the well-defended coastal city. In the interior regions, Yazid's forces methodically captured town after town. Most of the settlements surrendered peacefully, agreeing to the same conditions as were granted to Jerusalem: protection of life, property, and religious observance in exchange for submission and taxation. Damascus, which had briefly been under Muslim control before the Battle of Yarmouk and subsequently recaptured, was once again secured by Muslim forces. As the administrative center of the region, its peaceful surrender established a pattern for other cities. The Muslims maintained the existing Byzantine administrative structures with minimal disruption, replacing only the highest officials with Arab governors. The northern campaign moved swiftly as Abu Ubaida and Khalid marched in Syria. Homs surrendered without battle, having experienced Muslim rule before Yarmouk. The Arab forces conducted themselves in an orderly manner, adhering to their treaties with cities that had surrendered and treating places of worship of all faiths with respect. At Antioch, Byzantine Emperor Heraclius was forced to accept the sour reality that his empire could no longer hold on to Syria. With his field army annihilated at Yarmouk and reinforcements months away, Heraclius was forced to leave Antioch on his Byzantine fleet. His ships were said to have been loaded with as many valuables as they could carry. As he set sail towards Constantinople, Heraclius was reported by Byzantine sources to have been distraught. He looked back at the Syrian coast and expressed his sorrow over the loss of Syria with the words,
"Farewell, a long farewell to Syria, my fair province. Thou art an infidel's possession. Peace be with you, O Syria."
Local reactions to the Muslim invasion were quite varied. Groups which had suffered from religious persecution during Byzantine domination, Monophysite Christians, Nestorians and Jews, welcomed the new authorities and their tolerant attitude towards religions, even the imposition of the more predictable jizya tax. Orthodox Christians, who had closer links with Byzantine governance, reluctantly accommodated the new political reality. Syrian Arab tribes kept switching sides throughout the campaign, accelerating the Byzantine collapse. By early 638, the Muslims controlled most of Syria south of Aleppo, completing an incredibly swift conquest that dramatized the emergence of a new power in the Middle East. In 638, Muslim forces advanced northward to confront the two remaining Byzantine fortresses in Syria, Aleppo and Chalcis, or also known as Chinasrin. These cities' strategic locations, along critical commercial routes connecting Mesopotamia to the Mediterranean, made them logical next targets in the Muslim campaign. They were also bastions of the last organized Byzantine resistance in the region. Chalcis, the capital of Byzantine Syria Secunda, was strongly fortified and garrisoned by a mixed force of regular soldiers who had weathered Yarmouk with local militia. Their commander Joachim had reinforced the walls and stationed mounted archers to cause trouble to advancing Muslims. Abu Ubaida advanced cautiously, first clearing Byzantine skirmishers beyond the walls before instituting a total siege. Following an observation of several weeks' standing and after receiving rejection of his terms for capitulation, Muslim commanders noticed that there was a vulnerability in the northwestern segment of the walls. The Muslims employed a masterful strategic ploy, shouting a diversionary attack against the southeast gate while their main force attacked the northwestern wall. After heavy fighting, they broke through and Arab warriors poured into the city. As city streets burned with fighting, Joachim fell in battle, demoralizing the defenders. By noon, the rest of the Byzantines had retreated to the citadel and surrendered shortly. With scant delay, Abu Ubaida's force advanced on Aleppo, a much tougher target. The city's massive citadel, 50 meters above the plain on an artificial mound, was a serious obstacle. The Byzantine garrison, led by a general named Yukinna, according to Arab sources, was well provisioned and bent on resisting. The Muslim army initially took the lower city after a few days of combat, pushing the defenders into the citadel. This was followed by a 4-month siege with little success against the strong fortifications. As the supplies ran low and disease spread among the defenders, divisions within broke out between those who wanted to surrender and hardliners under Yukinna. The siege ended when a small Muslim force discovered a poorly guarded water conduit into the citadel. Infiltrating at night, they opened the gates from within, allowing the main force to enter. After brief but intense fighting, Yukinna was captured and the citadel fell. Having taken Aleppo and Chalcis, the Muslims turned to Antioch, the jewel of Byzantine Syria. Established by Seleucus I Nicator in 300 BCE and expanded by the Romans, Antioch was the empire's third largest city after Constantinople and Alexandria. Its vast walls, built by Justinian, housed a cosmopolitan population of Greeks, Syrians, Jews, and Armenians. Even after Emperor Heraclius departed, the Byzantine garrison had been reinforced by Anatolian soldiers. In Antioch, the Byzantine defenders, led by the city's prefect, hurriedly reinforced the walls, repaired any weak points in the fortifications, and stockpiled provisions in preparation for the coming siege. Antioch, in contrast to Jerusalem, could be resupplied by sea through its harbor at Seleucia Pieria, and the defenders felt they could hold out during a long siege. Abu Ubaida observed this issue and replied with a unified strategy. He first dispatched soldiers to capture surrounding settlements, isolating Antioch from potential reinforcement. Khalid ibn al-Walid led cavalry units to control the vital road between Antioch and its seaport, blocking naval resupply. The siege started in late 638. Rather than attempting costly frontal assaults on the sturdy walls, the Muslims enforced a tight blockade and repeatedly searched for weak points. Scattered skirmishes occurred when the Byzantines attempted to cut through with breakthrough operations. The Muslims held firm. Within a few weeks, food shortages and disease began to affect the city's population. With conditions deteriorating and no relief army in sight, the Byzantine government began to negotiate. According to al-Baladuri, after brief negotiations, Antioch surrendered on conditions that were exactly the same as the ones granted to other cities: security for its people, safeguarding churches, and imposition of the jizya tax. Loss of this great city, so deeply ingrained in Greco-Roman and Christian civilization, stunned the very foundations of Constantinople. What had been unthinkable 3 years earlier, the complete loss of Syria, now had been accomplished. With the fall of Antioch, the Muslims turned to the remaining Byzantine strongholds along the Mediterranean seaboard. The port towns constituted the final stage of the conquest of Syria. The sea cities presented the Byzantine Empire potential points of landing for counterattacks. Their powerful navy, unmatched in the Mediterranean, could transport troops and supplies to any port that remained in imperial hands. As long as such ports remained in Byzantine hands, the Muslim conquests in Syria were exposed. Abu Ubaida, seeing this threat, began a methodical campaign to occupy the coastline. Having no fleet of his own, Abu Ubaida focused on capturing these coastal cities from the landward direction, despite this being where their defenses were typically strongest. The Muslims had to overcome the challenge of besieging ports that could continue to receive supplies and reinforcements by sea from the Byzantine navy. Laodicea, or New Latakia, was targeted first. The twin harbor port, whose walls had been strongly fortified, was blockaded mid-639. Laodicea was surrounded by the Muslims and cut off from relief from land, and Byzantine vessels still delivered it by sea. After several weeks of siege, its defenders realized no relieving army would come from Constantinople and negotiated terms similar to those agreed for other cities: safety for the inhabitants, protection of property and churches, freedom of worship, and the payment of the jizya tax in exchange for Muslim protection. The port town of Latakia, situated close by, was next. The Byzantine garrison defended itself initially, but, observing the fall of bigger towns in its direct proximity, it ultimately surrendered, following only a short siege. The Muslims negotiated favorable conditions for both sides that allowed shipping and commerce to resume, saving the economic well-being of the region. Antirados, today's Tartus, and Tripolis presented various challenges. Both of the cities had strong Byzantine sea presences, meaning they could be kept regularly supplied at all times. Muslims attempted at Tripolis to maintain a formal blockade, but routinely, Byzantine ships broke through to bring in supplies. A band of Muslim soldiers later found, writes al-Baladuri, a section of wall that was not guarded and entered by night, flinging open the gates to the regular troops. By the end of the year 639, most of the Syrian and Palestinian coast had fallen under Muslim control. The Byzantine Empire, which had ruled these shores for centuries, was now pushed back to its Anatolian heartland in the north, though it still maintained control over Egypt and other territories. The swift capture of these coastal fortresses completed the Muslim grip on Syria and secured their northern border against potential Byzantine revenge. By 640, the Muslim forces had taken Syria and Palestine by military conquest, with only a handful of isolated Byzantine fortresses remaining in the mountains. For the Muslims, the focus now shifted to governing the conquered territories as Abu Ubaida established Caliph Umar's administrative scheme for all new lands. Conquered land was reorganized as administrative provinces, or ajnad, similar to military zones: Damascus, Homs, Palestine, Jordan, and Chinasrin. These were placed under a governor directly answerable to the Caliph at Medina. Arab garrisons were stationed at strategic locations, with new military settlements, Amsar, founded outside main cities to house Muslim soldiers and their families. Despite the change in governance, local Byzantine administrative structures were maintained, with Arab governors only replacing their imperial equivalents. Greek-speaking bureaucrats remained in position, offering continuity in day-to-day administration. Land registers and tax rolls were preserved, even though the system of taxation was streamlined under Islamic rule. Treatment of native populations varied by religion, but was generally characterized by tolerance within limits. Christians and Jews, as people of the book, were granted protected status as dhimmis, the name for non-Muslim subjects living under Muslim rule. In exchange for paying the jizya tax and certain social restrictions, they enjoyed religious freedom, property rights, and communal self-rule. Native Christian and Jewish religious leaders still exercise control over their communities in matters of personal status and religious practice. Perhaps most significantly, forced conversion was prohibited under Islamic law. While the Arab conquerors arrived with their faith, they did not arrive by the sword. This policy of religious tolerance, impressive as it was for its time, contributed to the relative calm of the early Muslim occupation of Syria. As the dust of conquest settled, a new era dawned on the lands of Syria and Palestine, a new era that would set the politics, culture, and religion of the region for centuries to come. After the conquest of Syria, let us shift our focus back east to Persian lands. Following the capture of Ctesiphon, Caliph Umar approached the Persian conquest with caution. He expressed his concern about overextension, reportedly saying,
I wish there was a mountain of fire between us and the Persians, so that neither they could get to us, nor we to them.
In contrast, King Yazdegerd III, having fled his capital of Ctesiphon, was not yet ready to surrender his empire. From beyond the Zagros Mountains, the last Sassanid monarch gathered his scattered forces. Veterans of Qadisiyah joined fresh troops from eastern provinces as the Persians prepared one final desperate counter-offensive. At the fortress of Jalula, Persian generals assembled a powerful army determined to halt the Muslim advance. With one last push, the Sasanians aimed not only at defending their Persian heartland, but also to reclaim their lost ancestral territories. The coming battle would determine the survival or fall of the once so mighty Persian Empire. Join us on our next episode of Epic Histories as we dive into the legendary Battle of Jalula. Folks, thanks for watching. Creating high-quality history documentaries is a costly endeavor, but your support can make a huge difference. By commenting and subscribing, you help us reach a wider audience. And by buying us a coffee, you help bring these important stories to life. Your support is invaluable. Thank you for being part of our journey.